We carried 800 horses to Europe, to Danzig, Poland, supposedly to plow the fields. They didn't have any tractors. They'd eaten up all the horses in Poland in particular was starving because Russia would come in and drive the Germans out, and Germans would come in and drive the Russians out, and Poland got the hell kicked out of it. And they were absolutely starving, and so they didn't have any tractors. They needed to plow the fields. Right. So they said about half the horses would be eaten. They knew they would be eaten, but the other half could plow some fields. But so I got it on July the 15th. My birthday is July the 16th. On July the 15th, we were about in the middle of the Atlantic, and the captain, there were 20 farm boys. I'd never, all the qualifications, they said, do you know anything about horses? And see, I'd ridden a pony a couple of times, and I said, oh yeah, I'm an authority on horses, and that's good enough for us. So I was assigned, it was 20 boys, some of them 14 years old, I think. I was assigned 40 horses on the top side. And they warned us that horses get seasick. I'm going to give you all a lesson in horses, because in a couple of weeks I'll learn a whole lot about them. And they said horses get seasick, and they told us if they get down, we had 2 in a stall. I had 20 stalls, 2 in a stall, and if they get down, they said call us, because we're going to throw him overboard, or her overboard, because they said they know they're going to die. And so I said, damn. And then on July the 15th, my birthday is July the 16th. On July the 15th, the captain said, all right, it was 4 of us on top side. They gave us life preservers and a leather belt with a hook on it and a rope. And they said, we're hitting rough waters probably tomorrow. And we're supposed to hook up to keep from getting washed overboard. And I didn't know anything about that, but it didn't happen. But when the ship went down, spray went all over the place. And but I was so sick, I didn't care about the spray. And I was laying on the steel deck, hooked up, about to die, and they opened the hatch, and a cable went down. You know what a boom is? Cable went down into the hole.
Oh yeah. And
they were pulling out horses. Some of them were kicking, and they throw them overboard. And I was so sick that I said, I wish they'd put one around. They attached to their hoof, one hoof. I said, attach that thing to my foot and throw me overboard, because I don't care. I'm so sick, I don't care whether I live or die. And but none of my horses died. And when we got to Danzig, the captain, we didn't lose but 28. Ship ahead of us lost 400 horses. And captain gave me a verbal congratulatory. I had the best record on the ship. I left Newport News with 40 horses. When I got to Danzig, Poland, I had 41. And I had a quick crash course on giving birth. And so my favorite horse was a white mare. She was very gentle, and we had some stallions on there were mean. I didn't know horses could bite. That's why I was little. And one of them bit me in the back, and the blood was running down my back, and I could feel the hot blood coming all the way down to my legs. And that damn horse bit me in the back, and I took a pitchfork, and I didn't hit him with the tongs, but I hit him in the back part of the hit, right between the ears. I hit him hard as I could. And after that, he always backed up in the stall when I left. And so my favorite mare was just a little bit up, and she was gentle, and I'd pat her and whatnot, and she was very heavy and thick. And I went by her one day, and I could see her ribs showing. And I said, what the heck is coming off of my best horse? And I looked under it, it was about this big, piece of jello, blue jello. I remember, well, about that big, but about that high. And the jello was moving like this. And I said, crazy. I ran up we had an alcoholic veterinarian on the ship, and he was drinking them up with the captain up there, and I ran up there. His name was Colby Graves. I said, Colby, my best horse has just lost her insides. And I explained it to her. He said, take this knife and run it as hard as you can down there and cut the top of that skin. So I ran down there. I was, I don't know whether I turned 18 or not at that time, but I cut the top, and about 5 gallons of water came out of that bag. And I ripped it back, and there was a wet colt about that big, soaking wet. And Colby came up and said, did it drown? Did it drown? And I said, no, whatever it did, I don't know whether it was a male or female, it's still living. And he said, put it up on the deck, and he gave me an old dirty gunny sack. He said, rub it down and dry it off. And he said, move the mare. Instead of 2 horses to a stall, I put 3 in the next stall, so that my mare could nurse the colt by itself. And so when we got to Danzig, the captain said we did very well. We didn't lose but 28 horses. They called me a cattleman for some reason in the Marine Corps. I mean, in the Merchant Marines. And they said, Cattleman Green had the best record. He left with 40 horses and got there with 41. We read, 3 of my friends read that they needed working vehicles in South America. They said you could buy a pickup truck in the U.S. for $2,000, and if you can get it to South America, you can sell it for $3,000. Well, I was 20 years old. We were all 20 years old, and we said that's a piece of cake. So we got the map out, Pan American Highway. We figured asphalt roads and stop lights, and so we went to Bill Early at National Bank of Orange, and at first went Danny Schaefer at Scott Chevrolet. Said, Danny, will you sell us a pickup truck? Instead of $2,000, he said $1,200. And I said, that's highway robbery. We were told you'd get it for $1,000. And he said, nope, $1,200. So we went to Bill Early up National Bank. We each borrowed $300, 4 3s, 12. And Bill Early, the president of the bank, said, you mean you want me to lend you guys $1,200 and you're going to take my collateral and drive it all the way to South America? He said, my board of directors would run me out of town if I did that. And we said, well, we don't have $1,200. You're going to spoil our trip. So he said, well, I got to make a telephone call. So I thought he was going to call the chairman of the board. Came back, he said, it's all arranged. Here's a cashier's check for $1,200. We thought he'd call the chairman. He'd call my father. We didn't know it until after we got back. And my father said, my $1,200 is kind of risky. And we sold it we drove it to Santiago, Chile, and we sold it for $3,000, but they weren't going to pay us. We sold it to a Davis E.C., Davis and Company in Santiago. We sold it, but they were going to pay us through Chevrolet and Orange. So we had just enough money to get back to Orange, flying British South American Airways. And so we did, but going down there, it was 8,000 miles, and we had a brand new pickup truck, and we had 8,000 miles on the speedometer, and we went through. I wouldn't let a son of mine do that. And spent the night and woke up next morning, July 6th, was my birthday. And so they said, you got to stop at the famous monument down the road 6 miles. And we said, okay, well, we didn't know what the monument was. And so, sure enough, a great big obelisk, 30 feet tall. On top was a round marble globe about, I don't know how big it was. It looked like about like that, with a stainless steel band around it. And then at the bottom, it said latitude 00.0. We were on the equator.
Nice.
So we put the pickup truck, Chevrolet pickup, with the front bumper in the lower southern hemisphere and the back bumper in the northern hemisphere on the equator on my 21st birthday. So that's how I can remember where I crossed my 21st birthday. So I finished up at Woodbury, and then I went to University of Virginia, and my father was kind of put up with me. My father was World War I, and he said, all your older brothers were in the military, and I'm kind of embarrassed about you because you had no military experience. And so at University of Virginia, Billy Reams and I went there, and they had a Marine Corps desk there right now, Marine Corps Reserves.
Yeah, okay.
Why we did, I still don't know. We joined the Marine Corps Reserves. And they had a training right beside UVA, and we could walk over there and train with them. And we didn't have to go, but they paid us a little money for doing nothing, really going over and listening to and polishing rifles and things like that, M1s. And so I went through my junior year at UVA in June or July of 1949. I finished my junior year, and I was getting ready to go to my senior year at UVA. I got Woodbury and UVA mixed up. I finished my junior year at UVA, and I got this brown envelope in June.
Korean War.
Korean War. And it said, get your affairs in order.
Oh, no.
You have 10 days to report to Camp Lejeune.
Oh, my goodness.
And Billy Reams came running over. He lived a block from me.
Yeah.
He said, what the heck are we going to do?
Oh!
And the first thing we had to do was tell our parents.
Oh, no.
And so we said, well, maybe we can get out. Maybe they'll let us out. But we tried, but we couldn't get out. So next thing I know, I was down at Paris Island boot camp. He and I both, and went through boot camp. And then the war was going on full blast, and we were both had 3 years of college, and they shipped us, they tested us for telegraphy. I don't know why.
Huh.
Yeah, they
radio,
and they tested us, and they said it had something to do with music.
A music
That's what they
test.
said.
Yeah, the test is.
Yeah, they said if you can carry a tune, you're more liable. So Billy Reams and I both apparently carried a tune. Next thing I knew, we were on a troop train going to San Diego, and we went. It took us 6 days to get over there. There was a group of us, and we raised Cain going over. We had a good time, but it's the only time in my life I've ever met a movie star.
Oh, huh.
Yeah. Nice. She saw we were kids, and we had uniforms on, so she sort of took me under her wing.
Huh.
She was about 35. She looked like, to me, like a mature woman. Well, I guess she was. And she invited me to have lunch with her, and she paid for it.
Oh, my.
And I had a little allotment. I could have paid for it. It wasn't much. And she said, I told her, she said, where are you going? And I said, we're going to San Francisco Telegraphy School. And I said, well, where are you going? She said, I'm going back to Los Angeles. And I said, where have you been? She said, I've been in the theater in New York, but I want to get back to Hollywood. And I said, really?
Yeah.
And I looked at her. She was very pretty. And I said, if you don't mind, I didn't even know her name. What is your name? She said, Wendy Howard. Now, I don't know whether that was her real name or not. And I said, well, I don't want to insult you, but I've never heard of you.
Yeah, okay.
She said, didn't you ever see any Hopalong casting movies?
Oh, my. Huh, yeah.
And I said, I saw every one of them.
Yeah, right.
She said, I was Hopalong Casty's girlfriend.
All right.
And she told me about
Yeah?
and one thing nobody else has ever said about in Hopalong Casty, they catered the boys 12,
Right.
14. But boys that late thought it was a sissy to kiss a girl.
Uh-huh.
And she said it was required that Hopalong Casty never kissed me.
Oh, my.
It was a sort of sidebar.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the only movie star I ever went.
Good, clean fun.
Yeah, and she got off and went over to Hollywood, and I went to San Diego, and Los Angeles was 100 miles north.
Right.
So I spent
That's where I spent
6
my
months.
Navy boot camp.
Yeah, it was 20, maybe 30. I can't remember, 20 or 30 in the class, and they were pumping them out of communication school
Yeah,
fast as they could. And so the night before, we were told everybody's going to Korea, and I said okay. So I telephoned Mary.
Your father would have been proud.
And telephoned Mary. I
Yeah.
said, Mary, we're going to ship out right now, and I just might be the last time I'll get to talk to you, but I'll keep writing you. And she wrote back, that's fine. Well, out of the 30 boys, they pulled 2 of us out. The 2 that were the only ones that had any college at all. And they sent us back to Camp Lejeune
Huh.
to take care of the general and his crew, and also to teach basic communications. They were short of communicators because in World War II they were all gone. The ones, and so we came back, and I spent the rest of the war at Camp Lejeune. Except when
on
they
the
sent
staff,
What?
on the general staff.
Yeah, I was a flunky, but I remember down at have you ever heard of Viegas?
I'm not sure.
Vieques is the real name, but they call it Viegas. The Uncle Sam owned an island just off of Puerto Rico, and the Marine Corps sort of owned the island.
Uh-huh.
And they would bomb it, and they put us on. I was on a landing craft with my Jeep, and I was the only one on there, and I couldn't see over, and he said, well, we're about to hit something, so I started the motor and I pulled a lever that covered the spark plugs, because I thought we might be on the water.
My goodness.
And so he said, okay, I heard it skidding on something.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. They said, okay, you can get off here. And I thought we were in about 3 feet of water. So the door fell open like that, and I was on sand.
Landing craft had come up and beach.
Yeah, I was on sand.
Yeah. So you were home free.
Yeah, I was home free. Spent 3 months down there. Only time I ever had a mustache. I never shaved my mustache, and it curled it off like that. And so when we got back to Camp Lejeune after maneuvers down there, we landed off the coast of Camp Lejeune, and we couldn't get very close, so we were out about 200 yards, and it was November, and we had to wade in.
Oh.
And I looked at the snow on the ground, and so we took a duffel bag and held it above our heads and waded in, and we had to change our clothes while standing on snow.
Oh, my goodness.
And I caught cold.
Oh.
And I immediately decided, if you have a cold, there's no way you should have a mustache. They were one of our best printing customers. We printed everything they did, because Mr. Milton Rubin, owned it, and he was conscious of his image. And we had the Orange Review, and And so he wanted to make sure that we didn't say or ask that we didn't say anything derogatory about the silk mill, which we didn't. We knew during the war it was a critical plant. And I don't know how far you want to get back to the very beginning. You know, hair. Well, in about 1902, they established the West Virginia Timber Company, and the headquarters was in Orange. But they ran a railroad from Orange to Graves Mill up the Rapidan River, and they followed the Rapidan River until they got out to Spicer's Mill, and then they built concrete abutment there in the middle, which is still there, and ran the railroad over there, and then they ran it to where the silk mill is now, and they had a big pond there, and they ran the boxcar. There was narrow gauge, but they ran the logs there and rolled them up into the pond, and then they worked them up and brought them into the mill and sawed them up, and then put them on the train going route north and south. That's why they wanted to get to Orange. And so the West Virginia Timber Company was the biggest job producer in Orange County, and they built homes in up on that hill, which are still there, but it's for the sawmill workers in their families up in there. And then at the other end of the railroad was they had a dormitory for axe guys. The only way they could cut a tree down was with an axe. But the point was, when they moved out, it was the biggest economic downturn.
Yes.
In Orange. All those guys lost, and so the banks got involved, and because people couldn't make their loan and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so Carol Slaughter read in the Wall Street Journal wanted a location for Northern Plant to locate down south.
How did that sit with Orange? They thought that was okay?
They thought it was okay. They thought it was the best thing they'd ever heard.
Okay. No resentment.
They lost all his employment.
Yeah. Okay.
And so Milton Rubin's father owned American Silk Mills, and Milton was the son, and he sort of worked for his father, and the lady took over everything. And so that's created the Orange County Chamber of Commerce to get this thing going. So they invited.
And what year was that we're talking about, more or less?
About 1927, when the action started of looking for this plant. And so let me say, so they invited Milton Rubin down to look at the property. And he came by train, like everybody did, and the Chamber of Commerce had a parade.
And they counted the people, how many were
caravan.
There? A caravan, okay.
Half the businessmen in Orange met Milton Rubin at the train. And they walked up to the brand new James Madison Hotel for lunch.
Oh, okay.
And
a nice little walk through the town.
Yeah, that's right. They didn't have cabs.
Yeah, okay.
Or buses, so they walked up there, and all of them chatting with them. And Milton Rubin later told me that because he always kept close to the Orange Review, he said, they were so nice to me that I couldn't turn them down.
Oh.
And
so that doesn't sound like North-South fight anymore. It sounds like they had gotten over all the Civil War unpleasantness.
Oh yeah, they wanted jobs. They didn't care.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, Buck Early worked for the Citizens Bank. Told me, he said, if a woman or girl came in and showed him a paycheck from the American Silk Mill, he would give them a loan on just about anything, particularly houses. All he wanted to see was a paycheck. Now, the next thing, it just so happened when I was first married, we had Betsy, and then Duffy, and then we needed a babysitter. So we found out that Edna Hollow, no, her maiden name was Edna Tucker, needed a job. Atwell Tucker was the parts manager at Orange Motor Company. And so we heard that Mrs. Tucker was looking for a job to babysit. So we were her first customers. She said when she graduated from Orange High School, Milton Rubin came to Orange High School and offered every student in the senior class a job at the American Silk Mill. And Mrs. Tucker said most of them took it. One of them who didn't take it was Henry DeJohnny.
And he went
to law school.
Right, okay.
And he didn't take a job.
Yeah.
And now a lot of things I can't exactly remember, but Ms. Tucker said there were no jobs for women at all, and except a few secretaries, and she was only 16 years old. And it just so happens that 16 was the minimum age that they could hire because of child labor laws.
Right, exactly.
And it just so happens, according to Milton Rubin, that it's the ideal job for a 16-year-old girl with small hands and limber fingers. And so Ms. Tucker took the job. Then I'm fuzzy. She either said she made $15 a week or 15 cents an hour. I'm fuzzy on one or the other.
Okay.
But she said, that's more money than I ever thought about. And she said, I didn't know what I was going to do with all that money. But they lived on a little farm. They had a couple dozen cows and hogs and pigs, and it was hard to make ends meet. And she said her father always wanted a cream separator, I guess you call it, a milk separator or something. He always wanted it because they would wait until the thing would settle and then sell cream up at Orange Creamery Company. And but he said it was so long to wait for it, but now he knew about a separator, but he couldn't afford one. And so Mrs. Tucker is very sad. She said she and her sister both worked at the silk mill. They went together and bought a separator. And Miss Tucker said it's the only time she ever saw her father cry.
Oh my!
With that kid.
Yeah.
And so then she would tell me what went on. She said it was warm in the winter, and they didn't have central heat. They had wood stoves, and they said in the summer they had big fans, and
so they could keep their fingers nimble and work.
Yeah,
productive.
And they wore. She said they wore aprons with a string around their waist and a little small pair of scissors hanging, and thread would break. They would stop the machines, and their job was to find the two ends and put them together, put a square knot on, suppose, and then clip them. So when you had a silk shirt on, you could run your hand down and you'd feel a tiny little knot right there.
Yeah.
But most shirts, then you probably wouldn't get more than one or even one out of it.
So how many people were working at the silk mill when it first opened up?
That I do not know.
Between what and what? 20 people, 40 people?
Oh, they had the whole senior class, so that was 20 right there. And I would guess, from just rough memory, that there were probably 40.
Did they run double shift or triple shift in the war?
Triple. They ran 7 days a week and 8 hours to a shift, 7 days a week. And they, at the peak, they had hired 1,000 women.
Oh my goodness!
Milton Rubin bought old school buses, ran them all the way to the Blue Ridge Mountains and all the way to Louisa, and brought them in. And then so Page Higginbottom's father, I can't think of it, Higginbottom, so that he saw opportunity. So he came from the valley and opened up a grocery store. And the women got off from work and went over and bought groceries and got on the bus and went back home. And Higginbottom made a lot of money.
But that was the peak years during the war.
No, beginning before the war, when they were still, they started
Still starting up.
See, when they was going full steam, they kept adding every year during the Depression. Orange really never suffered from depression. Culpeper did, because they didn't have any of. Orange was the largest employer, silk mill.
Yeah.
And it gave them jobs and gave us income because we did all that printing.
Right.
And so I don't want to jump around, but during the war, a lot of things changed during the war. They put a chain link fence all around the silk mill. And they had a guardhouse right at the front.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
It was a man sitting in there, and you had to pass him and get his give him opinion why you had to go through those gates. And for example, when I'd go down there in a pickup truck taking printing bureau, I'd stop and he'd say, "Go ahead," because they saw me. But they were afraid of sabotage during the war. And but that wasn't the only thing that Milton Rubin was afraid of.
What else? Theft?
The Union.
Oh, yes. Because if it was unionized, all that profit would start to disappear.
Yeah, not all, but some of it.
Yeah.
And
okay.
so I'm not against the union, let's say that. I'm just saying I'm not
that
for
was
it.
his view, yeah.
It's there or is still there. But they never unionized, and they didn't want a guy, some Yankee come in here to want to speak to some of the employees. You couldn't do it. I'm sorry, you can't go in.
Yeah.
You gotta meet them at the grocery store or something like that. And I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
But it never unionized. And that Mr. Ruin gave me a tour of the plant one time, and it's still there. They have a big vault there, combination like a safe, like a bank.
Yeah. Okay.
And they'd buy silk in bales. They call it bales. You got to understand. Mrs. Tucker told me all about it. Every cocoon produces silk on the inside of that cocoon.
But it's all wound up. It's hard to get it
but
into
it's
one line.
strand. And one
So
strand,
unroll it.
and one strand of a cocoon would reach from the silk mill to the courthouse.
Uh-huh.
That's how fine it is. Mr. Rubin said, I don't know whether he's telling me the truth or not, but I'm just telling you what he told me.
Yeah, okay.
He said, we produce more parachutes than any other plant in the world. And he also said, next to Japan, we have the largest silk mill in the world, second. And so the government sent a department of something down here from Washington to, I should have brought it, to honor the silk mill with an E. You know what E?
Battle efficiency.
Efficiency.
Right.
And they gave every employee a sterling silver pin.
Wow.
I have one. During the war, at the end of the war, they didn't have a supply of silk because it came from Japan and China. The last silk
and
they
had
got,
used up all their silk that they had.
Yeah, but they got them
stock.
from China
Uh-huh.
a little bit later on. But so the United States government said, we've got to do something about it. So the scientists invented nylon.
But it works different than silk.
It's too coarse.
Uh-huh.
These machines were built for fine thread, and it wouldn't take these coarse nylon threads. And so Milton Rubin sold it to another company who thought he could do something, but it didn't. And so all of a sudden, Orange lost one of its major employees. I just can't tell you, having lived in two towns, a couple of them in Orange. A couple of them looked at Orange during the Depression and said, man, they're really doing well in Orange. And because of the silk mill. And I took my foot and I kicked the box to the side, and a baby cried. And I turned, cold, and I looked down in there, and there was a naked baby who had kicked off his blanket, and he was raising Cain. I can't think of the girl's name, who was the receptionist there then. I'll come after a while. Came out and said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I said, "The blank door is locked, and look what I got here." And she said, "What is it?" And I picked the box up. I went into the vestibule in front, and I took the top off, and she screamed. She screamed and almost fainted. And Dolores, administrator, came running out and said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I said, "Dolores, this is wrong." She knew exactly what the situation was. She got on the intercom and said, "I need some nurses up here. We have found a baby on the front door." And every nurse in the place came to take care of her. And they immediately called the rescue squad, and they came and took the UVA hospital, and it was about a 8.5-pound healthy baby boy. The nurses named the little boy Peter Rabbit. And the reason they named it because it was Good Friday. And so the name was, everybody knew it, his name was Peter Rabbit. Monroe Wall said, we're going to be under the gun. We've got to build a new school. And so Monroe and I became the two most liberal guys that ever lived, and we built a new brick school, which the African American named it Prospect Heights. And the old school, they tore it down. Fortunately, I'm glad they did, because I hate to admit that I lived in an area where they packed in 11 grades into 2 rooms. Along came integration, and we didn't know what to do. So Robert Butt was the superintendent. So we said, we're going to have to get some African American teachers. And I said, I'd like to get an African American disciplinary teacher who'd just be in charge of making students behave. And I had a reason. It wouldn't be, well, it is racial, but I was trying to alleviate the racial problem that we thought we were going to have. We didn't know whether the students would accept them. It seemed like it didn't make any difference at all. Everything was going fine. And I had 2 children in the high school at the time. And they told me what was going on. And they said they didn't see anything. They didn't see anything wrong. There's some real nice girls in their class. They were just as friendly and whatnot. And so I reported that to what I knew. As far as I know, I was the only member of the school board who had children in school. So that's the story of my life.